privilege to be in the home of a very extraordinary man. He's been at the top of his profession for nearly 7 decades, and he is one of the most highly valued aeronautical engineers and aerodynamicists, and his achievements have included land speed record and golf balls, as I understand.
That's right.
Yeah. Ron Ayers, MBE, recognised for your achievements and an incredible life. What I'm hoping to do today is to find out what triggered this incredible career. What prompted you to want to be an engineer?
Well, a good start is that my father was an engineer, so it kind of led me in that direction. Also, when I was around 7 or 8, I was in the Blitz in London, so I got plenty of experience looking at the bombers and fighters and collecting bits of aircraft after air raids. And yes, interested in engineering and hardware. And after the war, I started fairly naturally making models of aircraft, etc., including gliders. And I found gliders were a bit boring after a while. So one November the 5th, I put some fireworks one under each wing, which is fine. The thing flew off until, just imagine the wing, 2 fireworks, it burnt the tail off, so it crashed. So that was not very successful. But having got the aeronautical bug now, I tried it again, rebuilt the thing, put more fireworks on, further out this time, and then you learn from experience. But this time it went straight up into a tree and I couldn't get it down without use of my catapult, which damaged it rather a lot. It also broke the window of a nearby greenhouse where everyone was growing all their vegetables for victory. That made me very unpopular, and I was made to. My father confiscated my all my weaponry. So yeah, that was the end of that. When I left school, I was not considered very bright, and not bright enough to go to university.
Well, that's a joke, considering your career.
Well, I was at a school that concentrated perhaps on the arts and all my strength in the sciences, and they didn't think much of me. And but when I left, I started an apprenticeship at Handley Page Limited, which was then at Cricklewood, and I worked on, among other things, the first prototype Victor bomber, as well as older aircraft like the Hastings freighter that was used in the Berlin airlift. But at the end of that apprenticeship, where I was also allowed to take time off and study an engineering degree, I went to the College of Aeronautics at Cranfield, as it was then called, and took a Master of Science in aerodynamics and engineering. And then went to Bristol, where I became, after a few years, Chief Aerodynamicist in the Guided Weapons Division.
Amazing.
And so I was there for 11 years, and that was, kind of broadly speaking, the limit of my aeronautical experience at that time. After that, I left and did totally different things, like designing and making printing machines, and which are not particularly relevant to anything else. But yes, that's. And then it was only after retirement from that I went to the Brooklands Museum, because I've got nothing else to do, and they were just starting and they needed volunteers, and found this incredible place with this remarkable history, just starting up, taking the weeds out of the ground and restoring the Wellington bomber, which had only just been dug out of Loch Ness. So lots of enthusiasm, and yes, that was what I needed. So that started my career from there.
Well, here I've got some papers here from the Sunbeam Racing motor car, which I understand that you found at Brooklands.
Yeah. As I'd specialised in aerodynamics, I was very taken in their archives by a great big wall, many square metres, probably 10 or 20 square metres of wall space filled up, or storage space filled up with wind tunnel reports from the Vickers Wind Tunnel going back to the 1920s, with wind tunnel tests on the Wellington bomber and the Whitley and all the pre-war stuff, as well as Vickers Supermarine stuff, R.J. Mitchell's designs for early airships. And
This is Mitchell with the Spitfire?
and the Schneider Trophy. In fact, the Spitfire was not wind tunnel tested at that. And if you look in the reports, the published works on the subject, it says the Spitfire was never wind tunnel tested. Well, before it flew, that is so. Mitchell had got so much information from designing the Schneider Trophy aircraft, and at about the same size, he knew how to design a high-speed.
Did they ever put the Spitfire into a wind tunnel, the wing?
Yes, they did. I found, I believe, 7 wind tunnel reports around 1941, 1942. So it was used to develop the Spitfire, and I believe, quoting from memory, there's one a 2-seat version. So
there is a difference in the wings of some of the Spitfires, isn't there?
That's right.
Shorter.
That's right. They clip the wingtips and their various other things. So those development details were tested in the wind tunnel, but not the original design.
Really interesting. And I gather you use the wind tunnel for something totally diverse to do with golf.
Well, I didn't use it, but I found some wind tunnel tests around 1937 of golf balls, but not golf balls as you imagine them. They are golf balls with great big lumps all over them, pimples. And this started me on a quest of why would you want pimples on golf balls. Incidentally, the representation of the golf ball was about this big because the wind tunnel was too slow to represent the speed of flight, so they had to compensate by making the ball bigger, but with different shapes of bumps all over it. And when I looked into it, I found a fascinating story. The original golf balls, in fact, were quite soft. They were goose feathers packed into a piece of silk and sewn up. And if you go to the home of golf, you'll actually find these very early featheries, as they're called, the very first golf balls, which were hit around with wooden clubs. But when I believe the gutta percha was discovered, which is a kind of very hard plasticky material, they could make very smooth, very hard golf balls. Well, that was fine, but they were much too hard for the golf clubs of the time. It started smashing the wooden faces. So they then started putting metal faces on golf clubs. Well, that was fine for a while, but most of the golfers who weren't very good would top the ball and put a groove in a golf ball, which meant that the not very good golfers had golf balls that were soon got badly cut up.
Flat spotted.
Whereas the professionals all hit the ball as they should do, and they didn't cut them. And the remarkable effect of this was that the damaged golf ball surfaces made the ball travel a lot further than the smooth surface, due to a reason that wasn't apparent at the time. And it meant that the average golfer was out driving the professional, which the professionals did not like very much at all.
Unbelievable story.
So they started cutting and bashing and damaging their golf balls as well.
On purpose to make them go
That's
fast.
right, yeah. Until
But it made the game of golf a lottery then.
Yeah, well, it did indeed. But then the golf ball manufacturers started putting pimples on their golf balls to simulate the same effect. If you know about cricket, you know the surface of the ball affects the characteristics.
Well, there's been a lot about that in the news recently.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. Well, it does for golf balls as well. And if you get the surface right, you can hit it a lot further, and etc. So this was being researched in the Vickers Wind Tunnel in around 1936 or 37, and I found all these wind tunnel tests. And then going through, as I was cataloguing all of these reports, in 1941 and 42, I found the golf ball test rig was in use again. I thought, who was testing golf in 1941 or 42? Then the penny dropped. This was Barnes Wallis using the rig to test the bouncing bomb. And
just a very large golf ball.
That's right. And he had been very clever. Just imagine this ball suspended on a pair of spindles, which they put an electric motor in the golf ball and an electric current along the support so that the golf ball would spin in the tunnel. So he could work out what would happen when he span his bouncing bomb to help keep it in the air and give it the characteristics he wanted.
Must have been fascinating for you to discover all these things.
Well, indeed, yes. And then I found that one of the Vickers aerodynamicists of the day was a spin bowler in cricket, and he was able to tell a lot about which direction the spin should go to have the required effect. Yes, I followed this story up, and the next thing I found was, well, Barnes Wallis had got to do research on the bouncing of the bomb on the water. So he researched this starting in his garden using a catapult and marbles. I thought, well, catapult's right up my street. This is what I used to use. He was firing marbles into his kid's paddling pool in the garden to see what happened. He started damaging the local windows, so he was banned, and they must have thought the old man was mad doing this, because he couldn't say why he was doing it. He couldn't conceivably mention
even when he did say what he was planning, a lot of people said that he was mad.
That's right. He then went to a nearby lake, and by a happy coincidence, his secretary was a pre-war rowing ace, so she would be rowing him around the lake while he had attached to the front of his boat a rubber device for projecting marbles off the surface, which must have been a great sight to watch. So it means that this amazing weapon that he'd developed succeeded partly because of golf, partly because of rowing, and partly because of cricket. So who says we're not amateurs when it comes to fighting? But even that isn't quite the end of the story, because in 1947 I saw the golf ball spinning device back in the wind tunnel again, this time being used for the development of spin on golf balls. So there's a complete story from golf balls to golf balls via bouncing bombs.
A complete story, and hardly anybody realises when they go to Brooklands how much of this history is actually there. Absolutely. And being opened up all the time.
Yep.
It's incredible. So while you were, by then you had retired when you went to Brooklands to help as a volunteer.
Yep.
You then became involved with Land Speed Records.
Well, among the wind tunnel reports that I found, there was about 20 or so where the Vickers wind tunnel staff had tested done tests on models of the track racing cars going around the track at Brooklands and on the land speed record cars.
Yeah.
And this, I think, is a great example of the interdisciplinary nature of Brooklands, where you've got the car people, the aircraft people, the motorcycle people,
all coming together.
Yeah, all coming together, striking sparks on each other. I mean, as far as I was concerned, it was in those days a kind of a multidisciplinary technology centre. It would be called a technology cluster nowadays. In those days, all these people were working off of each other, helping each other. They all had their technologists. I mean, Dunlops are there, and KLD spark plugs, and all the oil companies. All their clients were there. The pilots, the aircraft, the cars, the motorcycles, the bicycles, they're all there.
All there.
It
was a centre of technology, wasn't it?
Well, I think this is why, for about 2 decades, Brooklands dominated the world land speed record, because they were wind tunnel testing all the cars. The Americans didn't start wind tunnel testing cars until about 1936.
Really?
Yes, about 1936, I think. So by then, Brooklands had dominated land speed record. The Vickers Armstrong company was the first in this country to have a privately owned wind tunnel. Before that, the only wind tunnels were either in the National Physical Laboratory or in the Royal Aircraft Establishment at Farnborough. But Rex Pearson, the chief engineer at Vickers, was an expert on aerodynamics, and he had a wind tunnel which in those days would have been a straight through suction tunnel, about 3 foot square, probably quite turbulent, not very good by modern standards, but it was pioneering for its day. And he would wind tunnel test all of the aircraft of the day, and I found in my cataloguing wind tunnel tests on the Wellington bomber and the Whitley and some of the early supermarine aircraft, like some of R.J. Mitchell's early flying boats and Schneider Trophy aircraft. So this is, as a kind of aerodynamicist, this was absolutely fascinating. I was just, apart from the fact that I was cataloguing everything, I was kind of reading everything, saying, wow, this beats working. Yeah, just, and among these, I found a document which I have here. It is called Racing Motorcar for Captain M. Campbell, dated 14th of December 1927.
Wow.
Now, Captain Campbell, that must have been Sir Malcolm Campbell, and it was a picture of graphs of the performance of his proposed Napier-engined Bluebird, his earlier ones, and then I started looking and found a whole set of 20 or so wind tunnel reports done by Rex Pearson, the chief engineer of Vickers, on these track cars and racing cars.
As you say, everything is interrelated, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that is why, for 2 decades, Brooklands dominated the world land speed record, because they were wind tunnel testing all the cars that, before they went out. And indeed they had to be good, because unlike in America, where anybody could build something and tow it along to the nearest desert and, or salt flat and have a go, we've got the much greater expense now having to take something abroad, and you don't do that lightly, so you do your research before you go. So that meant you do wind tunnel tests and make sure you've got the shape right.
So you dial out all the problems before you
That's
build
right.
it. Yeah.
And so it was partly the fact that we did not have anywhere to test it in this country other than beaches and things that I think actually helped us get systematic and organised.
Yeah. And these papers are incredible. So what else have you
Well,
got there?
I found other papers, such as one here dated August 1926, the Sunbeam Racing Motor Car, and this became the 1,000 horsepower Sunbeam, which broke the world land speed record, and this defines the shape and shows that in those days they did not know whether you try to minimise the frontal area of a car if you want to go fast, or whether it was more important to make it smooth. So it's got two shapes, one very beautifully smooth and the other minimalist frontal area, and they showed from this much more important to reduce the frontal area than to keep the shape beautiful. Now that is about as basic a piece of aerodynamic research you can hope to have. And this was dated 1926. I've got other evidence that the very first wind tunnel test ever done to find out how you do wind tunnel tests on cars was at the National Physical Laboratory in 1924. So this is really right at the early use of...
In the early wind tunnel experiments, and excuse my ignorance, did they have a flow of smoke, or how did you know? How did you test it?
You would attach the model to a balance where you can actually measure the forces. So you could measure the drag, you could measure the vertical force, and it would probably be only a 2 or 3 component balance. A 6 component balance where you can measure side forces and rolling moments, that would not come until come later. But in those days it would have been a straight through tunnel, which would be a long rectangular tube with a bell mouth entry, and you literally suck air through it. Sometimes you could visualise flow, and I've got...
because to the lay person who doesn't have the technical knowledge that you have, for one, I thought that it was all visual, where you could see the smoke or the air going over the car, but obviously not.
Well, yes, you do both. You measure the forces because that's going to influence what the performance is, and again, whether the car is going to stay on the ground, apart from other else. But
so what's this one here?
I've got here a picture of a car not identified, but it shows the flow visualization technique, and I don't know how they got that effect, but the thing that delights me about that picture is the sight of the split pins holding the wheels in position. I think that's a nice...
It's pretty amazing and very basic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It looks like a noddy car, really.
Yeah. That takes me right the way back to my model making days when I was a teenager.
Yeah. If you had to choose between cars and aeroplanes as your passion, which would it be?
Oh, I think now it's cars. It used to be aeroplanes and guided weapons.
Yeah.
No, I mean I'm interested in probably high technology. Would probably be summarise my activities. I've always been, all the projects I've done have been involved with the cutting edge technology of the day.
Does space travel interest you?
Oh yes, indeed. One of the projects I worked on long ago was in fact a satellite launcher.
There you are, something we didn't know.
Ballistic missiles and anti-ballistic missiles, all sorts of yes. I started on the highest technology end of things right from an early stage in my career. I'm not sure that it was a conscious choice, but I found myself doing it, and so I'm still doing it. These are not signed, so I've no idea whose writing this is, but they show the different designs, or refer to the different designs for Malcolm Campbell's Bluebird, and it's got the Campbell Napier design, tested 1931, the Campbell Rolls-Royce design, and the Campbell Mitchell design. When I looked at that, I read right through it, and I thought, Mitchell? Who's that? And then the penny dropped. Could that be R.J. Mitchell?
And it was.
And I managed to track down R.J. Mitchell's son, Dr. Bruce Mitchell, who confirmed that when he was about 14 years old, yes, his father did come home one day and said, oh yes, I've been talking to Sir Malcolm Campbell about Bluebird. So it suddenly this suddenly had a meaning. Now, I've no idea who this really quite important historic document who wrote it, but it occurred to me it could be Reed Railton's writing. He'd be the one person who's got interest. So,
of course, you had an association with Reed Railton, didn't you?
Yeah, indeed. So this is one maybe we could ask Sally, does she recognise the writing?
Yes, I can, absolutely, yeah.
Because, I mean, I've no idea whether she's got samples of writing, but wouldn't it be interesting if that turned out to be Reed Railton's own writing?
Would you like me to email that to her?
Yeah, indeed.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you've got copies of them.
Yeah, I have, yeah.
Yeah, by all means. And you know, they're referred to in my foreword, and you know, refer that to these are the documents. Could she identify the writing?
Well, it's distinctive.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that she would be able to, if it is in fact her dad.
Sure.
Easy enough. Yeah.
The wind tunnel archives carried on right up until Vickers finished. So it was it got the VC-10 and TSR-2 and all the post-war stuff. So right up until the Vickers site closed down, all in there.
Yeah. So there's a lot of work there.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, a huge amount of, when you think for, the amount of history in there. And so anybody with an interest in virtually any of those projects could go there for information.
Goodness gracious me.
In fact, it almost kind of unifies the aviation side of what happened at Brooklands.
Yeah.
In addition to Brooklands as being a location for wind tunnel work, where else was there that was competent to that level in the country?
There was nowhere else.
Even right up to the end?
I think in 1936, I think Donington Park became a racetrack.
Yeah.
Up till then, you couldn't race anything in this country at all. So this is where all of the racing occurred in the UK, on the continent, with their big open roads across France. Of course, they could do road racing, but Brooklands was the very first specially designed racetrack. Before anything in America, before anything in Europe, it pioneered that. Which I imagine that's probably is separately recorded.
What about the Germans with their interest in motor racing and aeroplanes? Surely they were developing similar knowledge back in their country.
They were. And in fact, this is one of the reasons why Brooklands is so important. When it started in 1907, there wasn't much technology in this country. And for instance, the racing cars were using German sparking plugs.
Well, that's why Germany was a leader.
Absolutely. And it just so happens that one of the racing drivers at the time, one of the members of the Guinness family, started making his own sparking plugs and winning races with them. So he started.
His name was?
And his name was Ken Lee Guinness, who started KLG spark plugs. And it's just as well he did, because otherwise, when First World War came along, we would still have been importing German spark plugs.
Which I doubt if they would have sold to us.
No, indeed.
No.
So it's the type of, a small detail, but it shows how important Brooklands was, fundamentally important.
Important to the war effort.
Absolutely. Like car tyres and fuels, etc. All of that was developed there because, again, all of the users were there. And so World War One, again, it had, Brooklands had the very first flying school. Just as well, when you got to World War One, where would the pilots have come from?
Yeah.
Well, the war started in 1914 and 48,000 aircraft were built and most of them shot down. So, but where would those pilots have come from? It hadn't been for flying schools like Brooklands.
Yeah.
So again, fundamentally important.
Fundamentally. What's your view on the fact that they stopped the track and built on the...
I could understand why everyone got very annoyed, but I also knew that the maximum speed they got to, it was designed for 120 miles an hour, which in 1907 was a lot more than, that was very futuristic. They didn't expect to do that. The fact that John Cobb got to, I believe, 143 miles an hour, whatever it was, he got, he was actually kind of bouncing out towards the top. It was already served its day. It could not be used after the war because you would have to restrict the performance of the car so much it wouldn't be a test. So, and it had been so badly chopped up to build hangars and hadn't been maintained. It had been hugely expensive and probably not very profitable enterprise by the fact they really couldn't go very fast on it. So, no, they made the only decision they could make.
Right.
So that was the importance on World War One. You can say the same thing on World War Two, and I've got details of all of the Dunlop car tyres developed for Brooklands cars and racing cars, right the way up to World War Two. If Brooklands had not been there to help to develop these cars, again, Dunlop tyres would not have been available or not as well developed for the vehicles and aircraft in World War Two. And again, engine development, the Rolls-Royce R-type engine developed for record breaking, for the Schneider Trophy and subsequently for water speed record and land speed record tests. That developed into the Rolls-Royce Merlin, which was used to power Spitfires and Hurricanes and all the other vehicles during the war. So again, you can't overstate the importance.
All come back to Brooklands.
Yeah.
Mm. So today, visitors to the museum, I mean, you must go there and see people enjoying it.
Oh, I'm delighted they are. And hopefully we can give them the flavour of not just the technical facts there, but the huge historical importance of them.
It is important. So when you finished your 2 years of going through the records at Brooklands, how did that lead into your association with land speed records?
Having found all this data on land speed record cars and checked on the performance, the theoretical performance, which I've now as a qualified aeronautical engineer I could do the performance calculations and the car calculations. I started checking what the theoretical performance was and what actually happened. And what I found was that the theory and the experiment tied up pretty well up to about 200 miles an hour. But above that, the actual performance progressively got a bigger shortfall compared with what theory as I got faster. So that by 300 miles an hour, yes, they should have been going quite a bit faster. And 400 miles an hour, a lot faster. And I couldn't work out why. And I thought, well, first thought, maybe it's the tyres. So I contacted Dunlop, who made all the tyres, and managed to extract from them ancient data of all the tyres made between the wars, which I've now got and is in the hands of the museum. That wasn't answering my question. It just didn't tell me anything that helped. So I thought I'll find out what Richard Noble did with Thrust 2 when he went 633 miles an hour. That was a lot faster. If I can get the performance details on that, then it would give me more data to work on. So I went to see Ken Norris, who had designed the Richard's car, and while I was there, Richard Noble actually came in purely by chance, a meeting in someone else's office, not planned at all. And Richard told me that he was planning to build another car and this time go faster than the speed of sound. And I told him he was a complete idiot and he'd kill himself because there's no way he'd be able to do that.
That got your attention, didn't it?
Yeah, indeed. And I gave him reasons why he couldn't do so, technical reasons that occurred to me, kind of, those are insoluble problems. And making that list of problems is very important, because having got a kind of engineer's brain, you don't leave problems, you find that subconsciously they're going working away in your brain. And I gradually realised, well, actually, I could tackle that problem, I can see a way around it. And by chance, when I next saw Richard, I said, well, I think it's just remotely possible we could solve those problems. Right, we'll do it then, he said. And suddenly I found myself designing a supersonic car.
This is at a time of your life where you had actually retired.
What
age were you when you sort of said, right, let's do it?
I was, then that would have been, I would have been about 60, yeah.
Yeah. And it started a whole new era of your life, didn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
A whole new world opened up for you.
Yeah. So since then I've been designing high-speed cars or high-speed boats, although not one that's ever hit the water, and advising other people like high-speed motorcyclists and anybody that wants aerodynamic knowledge. I'm probably the only qualified aerodynamicist they're likely to meet, so in order to, in many cases, to help keep them alive, I can give them advice.
Looking back at the tragic death of Campbell, and you must have seen the films many times, was it easy for you as an aerodynamicist to understand why it happened?
I got to know Ken Norris, who designed the boat, or the Donald Campbell's car and boat. I got to know him quite well, and he told me the story of the fateful day. And I could see, I mean, it took half an hour for him to tell me all the detail. I could see that from the anguish on his face, even a quarter of a century after the event, it still hurt him to think about it and talk about it. But yes, he gave me full chapter and verse, and since then I've also found all the details of John Cobb's boat, Crusader, and all my work on land speed record cars. I've probably got as big a database as any as on accidents, what caused them and how to prevent them.
Well, it's an important part of
Absolutely.
hopefully not having accidents in the future, although there are always new things that happen.
That's right. So combining that with my aeronautical knowledge and again aircraft industry has got a uniquely good safety record. So merging the two on my current project, and on the thrust supersonic car, which broke the land speed record and did go supersonic, led by Richard. And now on Bloodhound, we have a very strict safety protocol informed by all these record breakers in the past, and all that there's learnt from them, as well as other things that happened, like the Challenger disaster when 7 people were killed in a totally preventable accident. And so, yes, you build up a mental database of knowing what should and should not be done. And
but at the end of the day, what you're hoping to achieve with Bloodhound is going to be dangerous. How would you cope if it went wrong?
Well, as Andy Green is my best friend.
Exactly, this is makes it.
Yes, right. And again, I was a guest at his wedding. His wife trusts us implicitly and is one of our most effective fundraisers. No one can't really contemplate that, and hopefully we'll never have to. It means that we're a totally different outlook to previous record breakers, and this is what I learned. People like John Cobb and Donald Campbell and Henry Seagrave, etc., they were all their own bosses. They raised the money, they controlled the team, they made all the decisions. They took the pressure from the creditors and from the press, who were getting impatient, and they got pushed into running when perhaps they shouldn't. And they had all the pressure, and they probably had in the back of their mind, well, it's, in fact, some have actually said the words, well, it's my life, I can do what I can like with it. Well, that's only true up to a point. There's a bit of every person who's been in that team, in that car, and they never forget it. No. And having seen Ken Norris's expression on his face, what the impact it was of that having happened, then our philosophy now is any member of the team, if they've got any doubts at all about what we're doing, not only is allowed to raise it, it is their duty to raise it with the team management and not to, keep on raising it until they're satisfied the problem has been solved. Yeah. So that it is a unanimous team that agrees, yes, it is safe to run the car for the next run. And
at the end of the day, you can't do more than all be 100% sure that you've done everything, and Andy Green will be doing something he loves doing.
That's right.
And at the end of the day, it's his decision as well to go and do it. And let's hope he's successful. I mean, you must be fairly optimistic about it.
Well, we talk with confidence that we can do it safely. After all, we're doing this to educate children in technology. It's not going to help to kill the driver. You know, we've got the wider responsibilities of keeping this thing safe.
Yes. Yeah, but it is exciting and it is dangerous. So, but, you know, we all know that.
Yeah.
That's why we do it.
That's right. But we take this to the point that even major sponsors or film producers or anyone who kind of want to control the run, no, they have no control over what we do. They cannot ask us to do something that we think is wrong, or if they're not ready to run.
That's the big difference between this project and previous ones.
That's what I learned. That they had allowed themselves to be dominated by the press, and as far as we're concerned, it's the engineers who decide, and by that includes the driver and the operations manager and everybody that's involved in any way with safety and contributing to it. They collectively decide what is safe and only go as far as we consider it as safe.
Yeah.
No one else has even a vote in it. Even Richard Noble doesn't.
It's a good policy. 100% policy,
Yeah.
as safe as it can be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go and take other jobs. You've got to re-recruit.
Yeah.
It's a very inefficient way of doing things.
And Andy Green, as far as his abilities are concerned, they remain. There isn't a time when that wouldn't be accessible.
No, I mean, Andy, I'm not sure this. I think he finishing his time in the Air Force, if not now, very soon.
Yeah.
He's on a salary, so he's okay. He's got a regular income.
Well, again, I live on pension. I don't get paid, so I work full time just because I want to do it. And other people, where they can, they work for nothing. Some people need pay. So they're the ones that aren't getting work at the moment.
No.
So we're being kept going effectively by the volunteers who work for nothing.
But you're still working, from the point of view of what I received yesterday. You did a paper on acoustics and sound travel and the effects of it. So there's work going on in the background all the time.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I designed the shape of the car, but the aerodynamic system to do all the performance and all that she's done. So I'm now to satisfy company law and because if we're going to get money, we've got to have a formal company from going to get government money. I'm research director. My official position on blood health. These are me doing preliminary performance comparisons between the various cars and doing the type of comparisons that I would do if it was being an aeroplane.
So those are the papers that you got from somebody who worked at Dunlop who didn't like the idea that the records had been destroyed, but he made his own.
That's right.
Notes.
These are records done at the time, like in 1928 and right the way through to the land speed record were being broken. And this was a chap, purely as far as I can make out, a junior person at Dunlop, making his own tabulated record of all the performance of the cars and also the tyres, being a Dunlop person. So he recorded great details of the wheel size, the tyre size, the number of plies, the pressure, all the technical information as the tyres were evolved during the 1920s and 30s, which to my mind is a very important piece of technology and clearly benefited us on aircraft in World War II and etc. So this information came to my possession. It did not answer my questions of why the cars were not getting the performance I thought they should. So I went to see Ken Norris, who designed Donald Campbell's Bluebird, and asked him if I could have details from Thrust 2, which was, he was also involved with Richard Noble's car Thrust 2. And while I was there, by chance, I had met, Richard Noble turned up, so I met him, no planning, just purely chance. We'd been in the same place at the same time. And over lunch he told me that he had plans for breaking land speed record again and going faster than the speed of sound. And I, with my aeronautical knowledge, said, well, you're mad, you'll kill yourself. You can't, there's no way you can do that. It was only, I gave reasons why I thought that was true, but my brain started working on that without me realising it. And the next time I saw Richard, I said, you could just conceivably do it. And he said, right, we'll do it then. And that started me working on Thrust supersonic car for, took 5.5 years, from including the research phase, but we pushed the land speed record from 633 miles an hour up to 763 miles an hour. That's a 130 miles an hour increment, 20%, much bigger increment by, both in number and percentage than anyone had ever done, and was also the first and still only car to travel faster than the speed of sound. So all that came as a result of me studying data at Brooklands.
When you worked with Noble, obviously you both had incredible brains for the task in hand. But how were you the same, or did he have strong points that you didn't, and did you complement each other, or were you two very similar people going forward?
We're very different people doing different things, and what has happened now, I mean, that was a quarter of a century ago. Since then, the same group of people have been involved in the JCB Diesel Max, when we set the new diesel car record in 2006, and now working on the Bloodhound supersonic car. You build a range of expertise, and we've got people with totally different but complementary skill sets.
The skill then is making them work as a team, not against each other.
Right. Yeah, so Andy Green, quite phenomenal skills as a driver, based on his jet fighter pilot skills. Richard Noble, known by everybody, can open doors just from sheer reputation. Huge organising ability. I contribute the analytical skills and aeronautical analysis.
What about the men on the tools?
Well,
where do they come from?
They come from Formula One or from anywhere else. Anybody who wants to volunteer to come and help does so.
Well, you wouldn't want me if I offered to come and help, so
Why
you
not?
must have...
We want more ladies.
I'm not an engineer.
Well, I'm sure we could find use for your presentation skills.
You're on, I'll hold you to it.
Yeah, your presentation skills, we can use you very differently in our education programs. So, yes, you build up, to do these difficult projects, you need to build up a team of people that cover all of the requirements, all the management and technical requirements. Like, perhaps one who tends to get forgotten, Martin Davidson. When I met him, he's a squadron leader engineering. He is now responsible for all our logistics. So that when we go to the desert with a car and equipment, we fill up a freighter with 80 tons of equipment, an Antonov freighter, and go there. He's the chap that makes the packing list and gets everything there in order and ready to use. I mean, that is not something you can learn from scratch. He's been trained on that, he's got an aptitude with it, but you've got to have that skill in your organisation.
Otherwise everybody gets disillusioned.
But so I get publicity, so does Andy, so does Richard. Martin, no one's ever heard of. He's at least as important. We couldn't work without it.
It's a team effort.
Yeah.
Or it will be a team effort when hopefully you break the record again.
Well, it's been a team now for two previous projects and worked.
Yeah.
So, yes, a message that can come out to anybody that wants to do their own land speed record car. You've got to build up a team with all the skills.
I think it's the same in Formula One or any other sport, really. It's now become such a highly technical, any sport is technical, that it's not just one person doing something.
No, indeed. After we'd broken the land speed record and we were up to our eyeballs in debt because we'd even spent the VAT money, in order just to survive out in the desert. And so we came back in dreadful trouble. But then people started contributing money. They were so impressed with what we'd done that checks started arriving. And the team was invited by the Williams Formula One team to go over their factory, Well, that was great, and we got on really well with all their technicians and their machine shop people, and we realised we were the same type of people. That we were so involved as a team, and with the technology and the motivation. You've got to get it done. Kind of talking to machinists there. Well, this is a part of the exhaust system. It's going on the next car. It's got to be at 2 o'clock on Saturday. It's got to be there ready. That type of motivation that you can get when in competitive engineering of any sort. And so, we felt very much at home with that. And then at the end of it, Patrick Head, who was the second in command, took me to one side, said, Frank Williams can't be here today, but he asked me to give this to you. And his words, he's the meanest person I've ever met, but he asked me to give you this cheque for £25,000 for it, etc.
That's amazing.
I felt kind of...
Yeah, he knows. I remember back in the 70s, Frank walking around Brands Hatch trying to raise enough money to start his Formula One team, and people were saying, oh, poor old Frank, he wants to get a Formula One team together. He hasn't got a hope.
Yeah.
And he knows what it's like.
But the difficult thing, we could finish the car, run it, and get to its maximum speed, which maybe, hopefully, would be over 1,000 miles an hour. We won't know until we guess, until we get there. We've made a lot of assumptions and we've done a lot of tests.
The biggest problem, you said, was what to put on the wheels. What to make the wheels out of?
Well, we started off not knowing whether we could make wheels that would survive at 1,000 miles an hour, but with a lot of cooperation from people like Rolls-Royce themselves, which allowed us to use their spin rigs, and Lockheed Martin UK Limited, and some theoretical people at Rolls-Royce, plus our own team. Yes, it took 7 years to develop a wheel that could go at 1,000 miles an hour, but we've got one. Again, it takes the very best of technology from the very best technologists to solve some of these problems. So we're pushing technologies in everything we do. Have on board 550 high data rate channels. By high data rate, I mean capable of sending high quality television signals. 550 of those transmitted simultaneously live from a car travelling at 1,000 miles an hour. That's never been done either.
Staggering, absolutely staggering. I mean, incredible.
Yeah, but on the other hand, this is the way the world's going. The military need masses of data to control their assets on a battlefield. They need all this type of skill. We are developing this type of skill set, so not just the technology of the car, but there's an American, one of the big technology companies, that I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to mention their name yet, but very likely will in the near future, are taking all this data and processing it for us and will be able to present it for us. Wow! And all of our data will be, including all the stuff that we are measuring, all the forces, the accelerations, etc. That will be left live for at least 10 years so that schools and universities can use it as a database for teaching. We haven't asked for copyright on that because we've no wish to protect it. We want to make it available to schools, to universities, to students, anybody who wants to use it, because it will be a unique database. So it will be our gift. And we've started an education charity which we intend to keep going for at least 10 years after the project is finished, so that all the data that we've got and all the methods we've got of getting that out to schools, and kind of with model making competitions and etc., that can continue for at least another 10 years after we finish the project. It is primarily an education project. in doing so, we need to break some records.
That's something that not everybody would know. They just think you're out to break records.
That's right. No, we've already got the record, and without being rude about our opposition, I don't think it's likely to be broken by anybody else.
Unlikely.
They might.
Well, records are there to be broken.
That's right. But it's quite possible that record could stand indefinitely. We're hoping to break it ourselves, not because we need to, but because of the educational benefits and the excitement that we know that we can generate from schools.
Huge excitement in the whole country.
That's right. They've also got nearly 300 United Kingdom engineering companies supporting it. They're the ones that are Tier 4, Tier 5 suppliers in the supply chain for Formula One or for aircraft industry. You never hear of them. They make maybe the best pipe couplings in the world or the best, etc. They never get publicity because it's only the complete product that gets publicity. All of their companies' logos are on our website, and you can find it. And they can use all our material on their website, so they can make claims like we make the best pipe couplings in the world, and we've been selected to run on the Bloodhound SSC, so they get publicity. And we found from past, these companies do well out of it. And as soon as we announce we're doing another project, within a month, the first 100 companies are signed up because they want to say, right, we'll have more of this. We get publicity doing this like no other.
Absolutely.
So we're helping the government in that sense as well.
So apart from the need for more money for the project, what else needs doing?
Most of the design is done. That doesn't mean to say you ever finish a design completely, but we could complete the construction now. All we need is the money to employ the people and maybe buy perhaps 10% of the kind of equipment still needed, and then we could do it. But then we'd need to build our team up again, and so that we can get everything to the desert, which we're now planning to do in 2019. We were hoping to do it 2018, but money's not coming quick enough, so we're delaying to 2019. And it will be a big logistics exercise to get a car and team and support vehicles and spares and fuel and ultimately rocket components and rocket fuel, etc., all with satisfying anti-terrorist regulations, because everything we could use is likely to be, could possibly be, or conceivably used by a terrorist. So we've got to satisfy people that, yes, it is a military jet engine we got in there, but we're not using it for military purposes. So, there are lots of
so the whole team, everybody involved will be going. You're not going to leave anyone behind?
We will certainly have all of the ones that we need to operate the car. I think it might well be that we wouldn't be able to afford everybody that we would like to go, because that would be half the engineers in the country.
Oh, right.
But on the other hand, it's a big desert, so just kind of go out on your own steam, get a camper van, fill it up with food and fuel and booze, and come and join us. But
van's outside. So there seems to be this amazing team spirit with the Bloodhound project, which is very reminiscent to the team spirit that existed in Brooklands, with all the engineers and everybody coming together. Yeah.
I don't know whether engineers can claim to be unique in this, but when they get an engineering team, it lasts forever. For instance, it's now 1983, I've got 30 odd years since Richard Noble first broke the land speed record. Still members of his team meet have reunions, and we still have major reunions every year from the 1997 team And
Really?
it's go back with almost continuing conversations where they left off, you know,
Fantastic.
and mutually supportive. I mean, one member's got reduced health, everyone grew around to help, you know, so yeah, it's a team that you never leave.
You never leave, yeah. So we've spent a long time reminiscing on just scratching the surface of your amazing career. Looking back on it now, is there anything you'd like to change, any major mistakes you think, or what advice would you give to yourself as a young man?
Don't believe what school teachers tell you, I think is a good start.
That's something
despite the fact that I'm promoting education on this project.
They told you were a dunce at school, virtually.
No, find out what you yourself are good at and follow it.
That's good advice to any young person.
Yeah. Find out what your skills are and what your interests are. And regardless of what other people tell you you should be doing, make sure you don't forget, you don't lose the ambition to follow a particular path. That is very important. And indeed, with the modern environment, it's so unpredictable what the future is going to bring, it might well be that whatever the skill set you are developing might be just what's needed, but you won't know that at this moment. But it's best to have it just in case.
I think that's incredibly good advice for anybody setting out in the world, because it's a very much a wilderness for a teenager now.
It is. I mean, when I was at school, you could have a career, you could follow your father into a particular job, you know, because there's a structure to things, you knew what was happening. That's now all gone. You can't, I don't know how a careers master can now operate in terms of advising on careers. I think all you can do is advising people on skill sets and how to maximise your value to whoever may want your skills, whatever they may be in the future. And as it might be worth mentioning, when I was designing back, you know, half a century or more ago, we had a statement that the half-life of our technology was about 15 years. By that we meant that 15 years ago, half the information we're now using didn't exist. In 15 years' time, half the information we're now using will be out of date. That was the concept we had. I think if we applied that now, and I've seen other people make this, half-life of electronic-based technology, probably less than 5 years, maybe.
Difference.
And which makes an incredible problem. If you want to patent something, it takes about 4 years to get a patent, and then you enjoy the benefit for 20 years. If within 5 years someone else comes along with a better idea, what was the point of even going to the trouble of having a patent? I mean, moving so fast, all the experience that people like myself might have had is now out of date, totally irrelevant. I've always wanted to achieve things, and I've always wanted to be an engineer. And right from my early model making, I had ambitions to, one of the things that I did, having kind of been stopped from making model aeroplanes that caused problems, I decided to explore perpetual motion and see if I could make my own perpetual motion machine. And I thought, well, I know they say it can't be done, but I want to see if I can prove them wrong. So, kind of nothing like being optimistic. So I started using my Meccano set and my various other bits and pieces, and found there's always something that stopped me actually turning it into perpetual motion. So ultimately I proved to myself, no, you can't do perpetual motion, I better try something else. I didn't take it for granted.
They say there's a very narrow line between arrogance and self-belief. Would you agree with that?
That's right. Well, yes, I guess there is. Unless you've got self-belief, which might stretch into arrogance. Yes, you probably don't try these things,
Yeah.
but that's why it's most important to find out what you're good at and then practice on that.
That's the key to it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking to us. It's been
No trouble.
wonderful. Thank you.